Hello and welcome. My name is Laura. I am part of the community lending team here at Guild Mortgage, and today we're highlighting what our community lending mission can look like in action. Meeting people where they are, creating access to education and resources, and just building meaningful relationships within the communities that we serve. So I am excited to hear about all the amazing upcoming events that you have going on. Let's start with you. Tell me who you are.
Thank you, Laura. Happy to be here. My name's Matt Dengsot. I've been with Guild here for about 4 years, about 20, a little bit over 20 plus years in the industry, and based out of Portland, Oregon. And so, community lending, it's something near and dear to my heart. You know, as a first generation immigrant and home buyer, I was lucky enough early on in my career to understand how to buy a house. Someone gave me the keys, let me look behind the curtain. And that was the first mistake to let me know how it works. Because once I got a hold of that information, a big part of what I wanted to do was get that information out to the community, because homeownership is so valuable and important in so many ways, not just monetarily. One of my first jobs out of undergrad was working in the stock market, and way back in the day, 2002, and it just didn't do anything for me. It didn't get me excited, didn't get me up. I just needed to get my foot in the door. 2002 wasn't a great time to get into the stock market. And so after a couple different jobs in the financial services industry, I landed in home lending in 2005. And I was really drawn to that, to be able to talk about home ownership with people, help them figure out solutions and how to use their equity. And I love the problem solving part.
What drew you to make that connection into community outreach?
Well, what drew me into community lending and working with nonprofits was that those were folks that looked like me and had similar stories, and I could relate to that. And when you can relate to people in this business, when you think about it, our business is built on trust. And how do you build trust with people? Having similar backgrounds. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing to not come from a place of wealth, but I luckily was able to attend the University of Oregon. I got an economics degree, and that helped me kind of bridge that gap in finances, because the way I look at it with finances, I think you either come from two different camps. One is you talked about money at the dining room table, and one that you didn't. And for me, I did not. And so everything finance related, I had to learn. And so I thought I could bring that to the table for clients and help bridge that gap of scary finances over here buying a house, and where you're at over here of working hard, and how do you get that information in a palatable and in a way that isn't going to be, for lack of a better term, scary, because it's a scary process, especially if you're not familiar with the finance banking system.
Give me name and, a little intro on you, and then we'll just go into some questions.
Okay. Well, my name is Rayko Diaz. I've been at Guild Mortgage for 7 years now. I've been in the business for 12 or 13 years. I have a degree in real estate finance from Portland State University. Graduated from there in June of 2012, and then started my job as a mortgage banker shortly after that. I'm really all about the community and helping the community. I worked a lot with all the nonprofits in the Portland metro area. And one thing that I pride our team on is we can help your $1 million buyers or that first-time home buyer buying a $200,000 condo or townhome. We really have the home lending process and the buyer profiles encompass from $1 million buyers to $200,000 buyers.
Fantastic. What a pitch. I'm in. I'm sold. So can you give me a little bit of background into that community impact connection that you have, and how that, flows with work?
Yes. Okay. So yes, community lending is not about just sitting behind your desk. It's really about boots on the ground and guerrilla marketing, as we found over the past couple of years with community lending. And a lot of what we do is we partner with our nonprofit agencies to help out with, most notably, first-time homebuyer classes, homeownership fairs, and then also just pop-ins at the nonprofits and talking with the individuals that are going to be seeking their assistance, because everyone wants to do community lending, or it sounds super exciting until you really get into the nitty-gritty, and it takes years to build these relationships, and then especially work with the clientele to figure out what's going to work best for them and what's really going to impact them on the home lending side.
What do you say to loan officers that maybe are new to the game, maybe new to the industry, and are looking at community partnerships and think that's way too far down the line for me? I want money now. Like, I want to grow my pipeline now. I want to create success now. What advice do you give them when you say, yeah, no, trust me, it's worth it? How do you say that?
Wow, that was a tough one. Well, I think to what you said, it's a long-term adventure and endeavor, because everybody is trying to work with nonprofits because they understand that there's always going to be a pool of new first-time home buyers. And if you look at it from that standpoint, then are you really doing the nonprofits any good by trying to just be there to reap the rewards? You really have to think about it from how do you help the nonprofits do better, have better information for their clients, have more exposure for their events. Because as they grow and as you are there with them side by side, picking up tables after events and going to openings that they have, attending their galas, every little bit of exposure you get to them and you can show them who you are, then at that point in time, you really get the opportunity. Because without giving to them, it's tough to get returned.
Basically answered that in the entire question. You definitely have to show up, and it's not like a fast success money game. And I'll admit, when I first started working with nonprofits, with a bunch of the nonprofits a couple of years ago, there was a lot of strikeouts. You have to take a lot of at-bats to get your first win. Then you have to understand a lot of their inner workings as well as your own team's inner workings. So you're almost like the quarterback orchestrating everybody from the loan side of things. But to get into there, it's just a long game, and you really have to show up at events and show them that you really care about the people that you're helping as well as their organization, and you're not just there for the quick buck or trying to help as many people as possible. Because what Max said was 100% correct. Everyone tries to get into working with the nonprofits because there's always going to be a pool of buyers, an endless supply of people that you can help. But you have to have the right, you basically have to have the right heart and the right mindset going into it. It's not just going to be, okay, you get a bunch of transactions really quick and you'll never talk to the people. Sometimes it can be 6 months to a year in helping these people and actually getting them into a home. So I would say it's definitely more of a long-term play, but it can be very rewarding at the same time too. And it's fun to work with organizations in the Portland metro area that are really impacting the community, and you can see what your actual work is doing and helping people.
Yeah. And I mean, just from a pipeline standpoint, I feel like it's a rule of business. You never know where you're going to get your next deal. You never know where it's going to come from. And it could be from one conversation you have there or one that you have 7 years from now. So,
and let me add that another way to a part of it is that if you're in that sphere of meeting first-time home buyers, one, you kind of have to do your research on the nonprofits because they all have websites. Ask your fellow loan officers. We're happy to take calls with fellow LOs to help them with programs. So you got to know about the programs, and you got to kind of be talking about them even before you're connected with the nonprofits. And then when you have clients or prospective home buyers, you have to send them the client's way. And if you can do that, then now you're tied to a client that a future home buyer that's a client of the nonprofit, and you can potentially sit in and be part of those meetings. And then now you're face to face with the home buying counselors and the people who work at the nonprofit. So that's another route as well, is be already in that space and help feed the nonprofits pipeline of future home buyers.
Yeah, I feel like the foundational piece for all of this, the biggest takeaway, is just be sincere about what you want. Be genuine. Don't go in there, chasing the money. Go in there wanting to help, and the money will come later. Fantastic. What do you think would be a good first step? If I'm a loan officer and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm open to this idea, where do I go? Who do I talk to?
I would honestly just pop into the nonprofit and say hi and show your face, because you could email or call, but a lot of times, sometimes the email or call could get missed. So what I would honestly do is just pop by the nonprofit, drop in, say hi, and then just see whatever their next event is what I would do, is just see when their next big event is that you can actually meet them or kind of talk with some of your other friends that you have or other colleagues in the industry that you have. Like if it's a real estate agent that works with a nonprofit, see if they can do an email introduction or if you can go to the class that they're presenting. Because that's the hardest part, is just like the initial introduction to the nonprofit after like they don't know you or anything, and then slowly trying to see if you can develop some type of working relationship and stuff. So that would be my advice for a loan officer that's wanting to get into community lending or working with nonprofits, is just show up to their office, show up and let them know who you are.
Michael said I agree with. On top of that, when you do go to these events, be present. Make yourself known.
Yeah.
Get to know the folks there.
Where do you think the line is on what the difference is in exposure for you and your business between going in person to these community events versus putting videos up on TikTok? And there is no right or wrong answer.
I was going to use like a food analogy as I was thinking about it. I love BLTs, right? But if you don't have bacon, are you just going to eat a lettuce and tomato sandwich? Or you don't have tomato, you might still eat the bacon and lettuce. So in a sense that social media is just part of it, because your nonprofit clients, they're also going to want to vet you. And that's going to be part of it, as well as it's another platform to help the nonprofits get their events out, because the nonprofits only have so many resources. And so for them to get out their information, they're really relying on their partner lenders and realtors to help push their events and either fill the venue for a homeownership fair or, understand new products that are coming out. They rely on us. And so we have to be in that social media space to be able to give another push to whatever they may be doing.
Absolutely. And I feel like education too, because, people are getting their education online. But then when you go to these community events and you're there in person, there's no denying that there's information there. So what events do you guys have coming up that you'd like to showcase, that you'd like to talk about? Which ones are you passionate about right now?
One of our next upcoming events is a homeownership fair for the African American Alliance for Homeownership. It's going to be October 24th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the DoubleTree Hilton Hotel here in Portland. And this is going to be their 27th home ownership fair. And so we've participated for the last, I think, decade. And so we're super excited to be part of this event and be able to continue to do the work of helping first-time home buyers in this market and take advantage of the resources that Portland does offer in terms of the number of nonprofits that are linked with the city of Portland and are helping our first-time home buyers.
A lot of people that we help need down payment assistance, so this is a good way to re-engage some of those past folks that you've talked about, maybe 6 months, a year, maybe even farther out, because a lot of times these events, they have options for folks to secure down payment assistance, but you have to be pre-approved and you have to actually physically be at the event. So it's a good way to engage your database, and it's always fun teaming up with the nonprofits, helping out. We always do like a little prize for some of the participants in the past, and it's just a good way to see if people, because a lot of times some of the folks that are going to be there are folks that you might have seen at like homebuyer event classes down the road, and you never know. Like I had one guy, I saw him 2 years in a row at an event, and then last November he ended up buying a house. So it took him like a good 3 years of going to a couple of these events, getting in touch with the nonprofits, getting in their process and overall flow, gaining some down payment assistance funds, and then ready finally in the third year, he was able to achieve his dream of home ownership. So
That's
these
amazing.
fairs or these events are a lot of fun, just to go out, help the public demystify a lot of topics that they don't know about, because a lot of times they're like, well, I heard about this, I heard about this.
Rayko, I'm glad you brought up that point about clients who are on a longer trajectory of buying homes, because maybe that's another piece of advice to other loan officers, is that you have to be ready for that long-term plan with the client. It could take a client 2 or 3 years. And so if you aren't ready for that and you don't have a system to continue to follow up with them, luckily, obviously at Guild, we have Salesforce, so that helps as well. But that's just a tool. and how do you stay in front of those clients, and you got to be educated on how you help a client prepare for that. It's not always get them pre-approved today. They're buying a house in 30 or 60 days. It might be a credit plan, it might be a budget plan, and those are all things nonprofits do as well. So you have to understand kind of the inner workings of the nonprofits, and then be able to kind of align with what the process they're going through.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for joining us, and more importantly, for the work that you're doing in your communities.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest takeaways from today is that, community lending in a whole is about so much more than just being there when someone is ready to buy a home. It's just about showing up earlier, answering questions, providing education, building trust, and helping people understand what might be possible for them in the future. And for other Guild loan officers listening, hopefully this conversation is also a reminder that you don't have to start with something huge. Find a need in your community, build the right partnerships, and just start showing up consistently. Thank you both for sharing your experiences and for continuing to make an impact, one community and one relationship at a time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.